These notes are primarily from my fourth period AP World History class. We're going to pick up right where we left off in class. We did not get through the notes completely today. If you're a fifth period student, though, you can pick up the end of the notes here. I'm not sure how many of the last few minutes it'll be, but after we talk about the changes that Ataturk brought, everything after that point will be new notes for fifth period as well. I'll probably go over that in class with my fifth period, but if you wanted to start watching it on the video to get ahead, you're more than welcome to. So we left off talking about the Russian Revolution and Stalin taking over after Lenin dies, and so World War I is over, and let's look at what the state of Germany looks like at the time period. The 1920s in Europe was a decade marked with dissatisfaction of the war. It was an economic depression. Germany was upset over some French occupation of the Ruhr. Printing of money went through the roof in Germany. They started to print money recklessly. This is because, according to the Treaty of Versailles, they were being demanded that they had to pay back the war debts. And so one of the answers that the Germans came up with, and this is done completely out of frustration, is we're just going to print a ton of money. And so what they do is they flood the market with new bills, and that causes inflation, and so the value of the money goes down. And literally, you can see on the photo on the left, money was just in the streets like trash. It had hardly any value whatsoever. The gentleman on the right is probably collecting his paycheck, or perhaps he's going to the grocery store to buy some bread. The value of the money, the money was practically worthless, and so it took an insane amount of money to be able to buy groceries. There's stories of people that would use bills to wallpaper the rooms of their houses because it was cheaper to use cash money as actual wallpaper than it would be to go out and purchase wallpaper. So this is that severe depression that they went to. In 1924, Europe started to make an upswing, and some things start to get better, but they don't fully come out of it until the later 30s. We need to switch our attention to China and Japan and what's going on, because China and Japan were somewhat involved in World War I, even though they didn't play large roles. In the early 20th century, China's population boomed. I believe the textbook says that they had 400 million people by the year 1900, which is far more than any other country in the world. But there's a problem that comes with the high population, and that's the lack of arable land that they had, and so they ran into some problems with being able to feed their people. Tax collectors were very ruthless in China. The poor urban city dwellers were very jealous of the rich, and so there's a lot of dissension going on in China. Japan, they came into contact. Remember, Commodore Matthew Perry breaks Japan's isolation. Japan comes in contact with the outside world. There's a lot of tension when Japan comes in contact with the outside world. Should we adopt these new ways? Should we cling to our old traditional ways? And Japan embraces some of the outside because with industrialization going on, they have a desire for some natural resources that they need to run factories and things like that. There is a revolution in China. Empress Dowager Cixi, she was the Qing ruler. She promoted this Boxer Rebellion. There was a group of people called the Righteous and Harmonious Fist, also known as the Boxers. And she encouraged them to overthrow any Western influence. We want to get all the European influence out of China. It was unsuccessful. When the Empress Dowager dies in 1908, there were some people in China that were dissatisfied with how the Qing had been running the country. If we can't even get these Europeans out, if we can't get out from underneath their influence, maybe we need some new leadership. So two men kind of rise. Sun Yat-sen, and the other gentleman's name is, I just want to make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, Yuan Shikai. And so Yuan Shikai, these two individuals vie for control of China, and so they want to establish power. Sun basically has good politics, but he has no military power, so he doesn't last very long. Yuan, he comes to power because he has a lot of control over military, and so they want to establish a new government in China. And so Some things are going on at the Paris Peace Conference that involve Asia. Germany had some possessions in China and some areas in Asia. And so some of the land that the Germans controlled in China, at the Paris Peace Conference, the Allies give it to Japan. And so this is a kind of a deep cut for China because there's kind of this period of Japanese imperialism going on where the Japanese are taking some control of China. This is really going to anger the Chinese. That's going to spark something called the May 4th movement. And but the government, for the most part, in China is pretty corrupt, and it's going to be kind of silenced for a while until communism is going to come about there eventually. We now need to move on to the Middle East, what was going on in the Middle East, because a lot of promises were made by the British to the Arabs, to the Jews, and so we have a system called the Mandate System that arises after World War I, and this is basically where the Arab people were expected to have some say in how land was going to be divided and things like that after World War I. But instead, the European powers, they decided on their own what to do with the parts of the Middle East that were involved in World War I. And so a lot of these former German Arab colonies in the Ottoman Empire, what's going to be done with them? This is a question that the Europeans are not really going to seek advice from the Arabs like they had promised they would. And so this is going to give Europeans control of places like Palestine and things like that. Particularly interesting what goes on in Turkey, and this is the rise of modern Turkey. Everybody had been eyeing Anatolia for this land. The Ottomans have lost. They're on the losing side. What are we going to do? Are we going to divide this land up? How are we going to take it and things like that? There's a man comes to the top in power and basically rallies the Turks together and says, if we don't take control of our own country, then we're going to lose it. And this man's name is Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. And he rises up and he leads the Turks to fight for their land. He was extremely successful. He made a lot of new reforms in Turkey. He is an icon in Turkey today. He really modernized Turkey, brought Turkey into the modern era. There's not really a better way I can think to say it now. So let me go over, and this guy is still today a big hit. A lot of people are a fan of Ataturk. There's people, he's no longer alive today, but he's a huge champion in Turkey. So not everybody in Turkey likes him, and so there's some things going on with current events and things like that. The present leadership in Turkey has been accused of being corrupt and things like that, and so they're not really a big fan of Ataturk. But anyway, Ataturk, a lot of people like Ataturk. He made Turkey a secular republic, so it's no longer a sultanate like it was when it was the Ottoman Empire. He introduced European law style into Turkey. He breaks a lot of the he breaks with a lot of the Islamic courts and schools. He's going to replace the Arabic alphabet with the Latin alphabet, and he wants to adopt more of a European alphabet style. Women gained the right to vote under Ataturk's leadership. Women are also able to be elected into positions in government. He outlaws polygamy. He says that women do not have to wear the veil anymore, no more veiling. He gets rid of the fez, and he encourages everyone to take a family name. And so by family name, I mean what you would call your last name today. So he chooses the name Ataturk, which means father of the Turks. So most of the land in northern Africa, so we're kind of going to get away from Turkey a little bit now and look at some Arab lands and the question of Palestine. Most of North Africa was controlled by France after World War I. The British allowed the Iraqis to be independent. In Palestine, there was a wave of Jewish immigration in the early 1920s. This leads to some riots between Jews and Muslims, so a lot of arguing and fighting over who's going to control the land happens then. So that's some of the specifics, some of the general things that are going on, just to talk about what's going on in the 1920s. A lot of the class distinctions are going to fade after the war. We're going to see the creation of more white-collar jobs come up because machines in the factories were doing more. So there's some of these blue-collar jobs are going to be taken by machines. In the 1920s, women enjoy more personal freedoms, like contraception, and so that's birth control. Some countries even grant women the right to vote. We see some big revolutions in sciences. Max Planck discovers that atoms emit energy. We have a photo here on the left of Albert Einstein and his theory of relativity. We'll get Miles to explain that to us in class next time. Sigmund Freud has a lot of breakthroughs with psychology, studying the human mind, human behavior, and things like that, a lot of which is still held to and taught today in psychology. New technologies, the Wright brothers with the first airplane in the early 1900s. So some of this stuff is happening before World War I, because obviously there were airplanes in World War I. So we're kind of talking turn of the century, 1800s into the 1900s. So the Wright brothers with the first airplane. In the 1920s, film becomes very popular. Motion pictures, advancements in hygiene and medicine are being made. Some more technology and things that are going on with the environment. We start to see the creation of skyscrapers. Instead of people spreading out, they start building up. The automobile is going to hugely change the world. And so this is going to, really this changes the Western landscape more than anything else. So with the creation of the roads and things like that. We start to see gas-powered tractors for farming. So there's going to be a lot of revolutions going on with a lot of changes being made and breakthroughs with farming and growing more crops, which is going to sustain higher populations and things like that. So where are we at right after World War I? Basically where we're at is we have France and Britain are broke. Austria, Hungary, and the Ottoman nations are sunk. U.S. and Japan are stronger than ever. Women remain in the workforce, and science and technology is changing people's lives. All right, so that's the rest of chapter 28. Drag, what are you breaking in my room?
Cat speaker, cat speaker.
Oh, say what's up, Dragon!
So, I get